Hey everybody, Ian here with Redline. About maybe 12 to 18 months ago or so, I mentioned on this channel that I had received a sample of a great big welding fixture table and that I was going to try it out over at least the next year, test out the features of it and the quality of it, make sure that I was happy with it, and if I was, we were going to stock some at Redline and offer them to our customers. Well, today is that day. The purpose of this video is to show you all of the features of this thing and what makes it so cool. I've found in using it over at least maybe last 15 months, whatever it's been, that there's just so much adjustability to these things in terms of everything that you can do with them. I find myself using this table for all sorts of things that you would really never even guess. In fact, in order to get the correct shot and angle for this intro that I'm shooting right now, I found that the best way to do it was to use some of the accessories on this welding table in order to set it up to hold my camera and to actually get the shot that I wanted. If at some point during this video I tell you that that welding table is roughly 6.5 feet long and a little over 3 feet deep, which it is, just know that if at some point any of the specifications change, or maybe we change the accessory kit, how many clamps comes with it, something of that nature, you'll want to check our website, link below in the description, to see what the updated specs are and how many of this or that accessory comes with the welding table, because if we change that in the future, we're not going to go back and shoot a new video. So just know that our website is always the end-all be-all on the product you're going to receive. I feel like I should mention that if you're noticing in this video that my table does not look any parts of new anymore, well, that's because it isn't. In fact, there's a decent amount of rust in a few places on it. The finish on this table could best be described as like a black oxide finish. So it will rust if at some point it does, and mine has actually developed some rust on it in recent days. You can clean that off with like a sanding sponge or a stainless steel wire wheel, and then from there, just wipe it down with some WD-40. I feel like I should go ahead and just give you a heads up from day one about this thing. This is not a hobbyist product. This isn't what you want in your 2-car garage. In fact, the shipping weight on this table is about 1,800 pounds. I had to use my 2-post lift over there just to get the thing off of the trailer. The cost on these things is in the range of a reliable used car. So if you're looking to spend hobbyist money and you're wanting a hobbyist fixture table, this isn't it. Before I tell you about all the features of the welding table, I want to tell you about 2 things that I did for my welding table that I found it to be really helpful and cool, and I would encourage you to do for yours as well. First, I got myself some 2-inch square tubing, and I built an overhead tool board that holds all of my most common tools that I use over here at my workbench. So starting from the left over here, I've used some rod and made a little rack that holds all of my different sizes and colors of wiring. Right up above that, I just used some 1/8 inch thick 1-inch strip to make a little rack for my small, medium, and large tape measures. Come over here next to that, and I've used some bolts that just welded along the top at an angle that hold all of my wrenches. In the middle of this thing is a platform that holds my plasma cutter up above my head. Over next to that is a little rack that I made that holds all of my most common DeWalt cordless power tools. Made that little rack with my CNC plasma cutter, my Langmuir systems. That thing is super cool. And then down over here on the other end, I've just used some rod and bent it and made a hammer holder, as well as a couple of things that hold my most common 3.5 inch angle grinders. And the whole thing just bolts right there to the side of the table using the existing holes. It's super cool. Since this table is my primary work table, I did choose to bolt my vise to it, and you'll notice, no, not all of the bolt holes lined up, only 2 of them, and you would think that that would make it, you know, kind of loose, but it's actually very solid. And again, since this is my primary work table, most of the time I'm not doing fabricating projects on the tabletop. So I actually cover this thing with a Harbor Freight moving blanket for the majority of the work that I'm doing, so that all of my bolts don't fall through the holes. In the beginning of this video, I mentioned to you that this was not a hobbyist table. I want to take a second and show you what a hobbyist table looks like. That right there is 3/16 of an inch. That's 3/16. That's the thickness of the tabletop on a hobbyist table. Now watch what happens here when I take my calipers and I measure the thickness of this table. Let's lock it in and see what we've got. Wow. 1 3/64 of an inch thick. That's over a solid inch of steel for the tabletop on this unit. That's the difference between a hobbyist table and a professional grade table. All right, humor me for just a second here. Let's suppose that this tabletop was 3/16 of an inch thick, and I were to take one of these clamps and I were to start cranking on it. Watch how the angle of that arm starts getting just a little bit leaning in that direction. A whole lot of force on that thing, okay? And let's say that you're doing a welding job. Maybe you're doing aluminum. Aluminum has a much, much higher melting temperature than steel, and you're putting a whole lot of heat into your table. You're sitting here welding all around right here. There's already a ton of stress on that to begin with. And here you are making it worse by heating it up with your TIG welder, your torch, whatever it is. What do you think is going to happen to this area right here with a thin tabletop? It is going to bend, and it's not going to be flat anymore. You're essentially going to ruin your table. The thickness of the table is everything. It's worth mentioning that the thickness of the table is not just important, due to heat warpage and things of that nature. It's also worth mentioning that I assume you're going to at some point want to put something very, very heavy on the tabletop right here. And obviously you don't want to run off and distort the tabletop by setting, a 500-pound differential case or something like that up on top of the table. Also, one other thing that I've noticed in having a look at our competition online is some of your cheaper tables, because they're not as thick as this one, you actually have a bolt that goes in the bottom of all of the clamps. And they do that so that when they put that clamp in there, they know that they don't have the rigidity of it. Notice how if I grab this one here, there's not a bunch of play in it. It's very, very tight in there. So as a result, you don't have to reach up underneath here and then put a bolt in the bottom of every clamp, which may not sound like that big of a deal, but you'll come to find that if you're using one of these things, as I have over the past year and a half, you're constantly moving clamps all over the place as you set everything up. I'm going to date myself with this statement, but you can basically use all of the tooling and all of the accessories that come with this kit pretty much like an erector set. You don't have to use anything the way that it was intended. You can frankly just do whatever you want. Suppose for a minute here that I was going to weld these two pieces of 1-inch square tubing together at a perfect 90. One of the things I found that I like to do is I don't like welding up inside this seam right here because it's too easy to weld your work pieces to your tabletop. So what I like to do, I like to use these little boogers here. These are called 1-2-3 blocks. You get these things all over Amazon, dirt cheap. They're 1 inch by 2 inch by 3 inches, and they're a machine part, so they're exactly those dimensions. And I like to use them as spacers to bring my workpiece up a little bit so that when I go to weld up inside that corner, like you see right there, all of a sudden everything is kind of, raised up, so to speak, so that you don't have to worry about welding anything to something that you don't want to weld it to. And again, you just place one of these clamps wherever you want to. There's a million holes. You're going to find one that fits. I think and hope that it goes without saying, but if you're trying to accomplish a perfect 90 in this case, using these holes in the tabletop, it's going to line everything up to a perfect 90 degrees. Two things that I want you to know about these 45-degree clamps that come with this welding table is if you have a look at one of these things right here up close, you'll notice that the press head on it right there has kind of like a round cut-shaped plus sign in the end of it, which is great for like pressing on the sides of this tubing on the edge right here, or for like, pressing on round tubing, which we'll get to here in a bit. The other thing that you might not realize is that it can rotate inside of this head to whatever angle you need to get it to. In this situation, I'm just using it to press right here on the edge of this tubing and put some pressure on it so it doesn't move. Now that we've got this little fake workpiece clamped into place, again, think erector set. For instance, is this clamp supposed to be inserted into here to clamp this piece in place? No, but can you do it? Sure. So one of the things that's really cool that this kit comes with are these little magnetic stopper tools, and they're really kind of like an extra set of hands. Suppose for a minute that as you're setting all of this up into place, you need an extra set of hands holding something in place. These little magnetic tools go right into these holes, and will hold the metal up, as of course, as long as it's magnetic. Pretty cool. I find that I can generally get these little bolts right here tight enough. You can see that they have a knurled surface on the end of them, so I can put a pretty good amount of torque on those things with just my bare hand. But if I want it really, really tight, you can see that there is a hex-shaped hole in the end of it. You take a 14mm Allen wrench and lock it down. I know you guys are going to ask me what holds these two pieces together. I'll show you. You've basically got a great big thick O-ring up inside there. Can you see it? It's a great big O-ring that basically just keeps everything nice and tight. Our welding table also comes with a set of shim spacers, 4 of these actually to be exact, although I only have 1 here at my home shop. So basically what you have here are little machined spacers of an exact thickness, and there's a series of these things on here. You can use them to accomplish pretty much whatever standoff it is that you want. So if you decide, you know, that plus that is what you want, you slide it on there. It's a pretty tight fit. You drop it down. Here we go. Let's do it back here where you can see it. Drop it down into the table and then clamp your workpiece on top of it. That's what you use those things for, and it comes with a set of 4 of those. I already know you guys are going to ask me if the table is adjustable in height, and it is. If we look down here on the bottom of the table, you see that the little feet right there are threaded. You can adjust the table up and down to 31 to 33.5 inches. Of course, also you're going to use those to level it as well. Suppose for a second that your workpiece was way too large to fit on your tabletop, and you had a set of these 90-degree angle brackets that come with the welding table. There's absolutely nothing stopping you from securing them right to the side of the table and using them as table extensions to make your table bigger. To try and give you a better idea of just how adjustable these things are, I want to point out that on your 90-degree brackets right here, you'll notice that there's holes down this side, and you can't really see it, but there's slots on the other side, so these things can move to wherever you need them. Same thing for this one right here. And let's just suppose for a second that we had a workpiece that we were trying to clamp in place right here, and, you know, using a clamp, suppose we can't hook it into this this area over here. We need to exert a force from an opposite direction. Well, if we put our clamp in over here, it's of course trying to clamp in that direction. There's absolutely nothing stopping us from reversing our clamp, push it back on there, put our workpiece in, and then all of a sudden we're doing a pushing effect in the opposite direction. That's awesome. Those of you guys who are working with round tubing, this table comes with a set of round tubing base mounts. You have a little screw here that screws into the back side of this thing. I say it's little, it's pretty big. And that basically just keeps your mount here from spinning in case you want to be able to lock it in place. But anyways, comes with a set of these things. And you drop them into the table, you lock them in with the bolt if you want to. You take your round tubing, set it across there. And of course, because your clamps have that end to them that we talked about earlier, you can just adjust that right there so that those round spots on that clamp push down on it, and all of a sudden, that thing is really solid. If you need more of these little boogers right here, it's just a standard 28mm hole. You can get those things from us, or frankly, all over the place. When I tell you that these things are kind of like industrial grade erector sets, frankly, I just don't know how else to put it. Suppose for a minute that you had something on the work table here that you wanted to clamp in place, and it was very tall. You had to have a clamping force come down from up high. Plus, it was, you know, a great big round thing, and you wanted to reach out over it and exhibit a clamping force. And of course, you can't just take your clamps and just put it right into the table. It's never going to cut it. You've got to relocate your clamps. There's absolutely nothing stopping you with putting these things together, basically like Legos. And now that I've put this piece here, all I got to do is take my clamp, slide it right in, and then I can push down from way out here, way up here, and I'll do you one better. Suppose that I wanted to take one of these little 90-degree angle brackets, put this thing right in here, and now I can take my clamp, I can put it in this away, clamp that away, bring it in through here. Whatever you want to do, it's basically just a giant erector set. In fact, I found this table to be so handy in clamping pretty much anything to it. When I got ready to do some fabrication work to my 67 Nova front fenders, you can see in these shots that I even found a way to secure the front fenders to the welding table without damaging them. And before I go, I should take the opportunity to point out that the entire tabletop is engraved with like a Cartesian grid system, if you will, that is engraved into the table. You can't wipe that off. And then over here on the edge of the table, you'll notice that there is a ruler engraved into the edge of the table as well. Okay, fine, I lied. There's one other thing that I wanted to show you. Notice how I've got a piece of 1-inch square tubing clamped to the table here and another clamped to it here. I've used some of my bracketry to set it up to 90 degrees, and now maybe I want to set this thing up to where we're building a 3D part instead of a 2D part like it is right there. Maybe I want to take this little piece of scrap steel here and I want to just put it right up against that block that I've set to the table and weld the two together, taking it into 3D. There's absolutely nothing stopping me with just installing a clamp right on the side of the table and clamping that thing into place. In fact, I can even change the angle of stuff if I want to, move it over a little bit, weld it in place at 45 degrees. Whatever you want to do, it's just totally adjustable. Before I let you go, I should let you know that all of those welding table accessories that you see on my table here at home, all of this stuff does come with our table as a kit, but definitely be sure to check the website as accessories may be changed over time. All right, guys, that has been the lowdown on our new welding table at Redline. Really excited to have one of these things here in my shop. Been wanting one for a long time. Just absolutely hate it, you know, when I build something and realize afterwards that something's not square, something's not flat and all in the same plane. A welding table just totally solves that problem. So anyways, link in the description. We're going to find those things on our website. If you got questions, by all means, ask them below in the comments. I'm happy to answer questions in the comments. If you want to make sure you don't miss my future videos here in the shop, just click the subscribe button down below. Appreciate you guys watching. Hope y'all had fun. Y'all take care.